Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk about this since I've been hearing about it a little bit of rumblings yesterday, and I was waiting for a second source. And since the second source came up and I found it on Sports Collectors Daily as well, I figured it would be a good time to talk about it. So, first of all, I want to give credit where it's due. The first I saw of this was from Victor, rookie card specialist here, where he put a link in Spotify to a breaking news item from Hobby News Daily. So that's the new project that's coming out there that they've just gotten off the ground at the beginning of the month here, just soft launch. But this was a great one for them. A quick 5 minute kind of recap here, audio wise, where John Newman kind of discussed that he had spoken to some industry sources that they had encountered that it looked like that several folks from Panini were being poached from Fanatics. And that was the first kind of real word about it. So it's one of those things where I wanted to, as I said, wait for a second resource. And Sports Collectors Daily has actually come and put that together. So I'll leave a link to all three of these things. I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. So a link to Victor's channel if you want to check out a lot of things related to the rookie card. He does a lot of great work on that. And a link to the hobby breaking news thing from the Spotify piece. And then also from this article from Sports Collectors Daily, which summarizes things actually very nicely. So it's one of those things where I wanted another resource to confirm a lot of these items, but also at the same time summarize things, which is what a lot of these are great for. So links to all that will be in the description for you. But what it really comes down to is this. It's the next step in what looks like have been a series of steps that we've discussed in the past where Fanatics has been slowly seizing a little bit more control of some of these different things. They've moved very methodically, but at the same time, very aggressively. And when they're ready to really make a move, then they're starting to make a move. And right now, you're seeing Fanatics a lot more out there. You're seeing Michael Ruman making the rounds at card shows and card shops. He's being a lot more visible. They're doing a lot of these things. They announced the piece with the MLB debut patch, so they're working on that. That was their big announcement. Again, not the craziest thing for me, but it is significant. It is another step in terms of using the partnership with the players' associations. That's a big deal. The advertising campaigns that they're doing with MLB players, that's a big deal. And one of the pieces that led down this path here this past week or so was the announcement. Well, I shouldn't say announcement. Let me correct myself. So there was the tweet from Shams Sharania. So I totally butchered that. I'm sorry. Of The Athletic that Fanatics would be utilizing the Topps name to produce basketball cards during the 2023-2024 season. And the thing is, they don't have that license yet. So I know Neo and several others have talked about it, and it is a big deal. But it's one of those things where the first question is, you don't have the license, so is this going to be an unlicensed product, or is this going to be a licensed product? And now we're adding these additional dominoes falling that could lead to the suggestion that even if they don't have the license yet, it could be an act towards getting a little bit of additional pressure on Panini to try to get access to that license, either through a straight purchase or a leasing agreement or something like, give us that license and we'll do something with that. But they're trying to apply pressure to Panini, not dissimilar to the way they applied pressure to Topps when it came time to take that MLB side of things and get the Topps name and brand. They made some very aggressive moves. They were able to kind of torpedo Topps' plans for a SPAC. They torpedoed that. Well, in turn, suddenly Topps became a lot less valuable with a licensing agreement that was coming to an end quickly and rapidly. And obviously, we had a lot of discussion for it back then. Now, obviously, they own Topps, and now they're able to leverage different things. And one of the other pieces of the puzzle here is that they have also, the rumor going around for quite some time is that they acquired access either with a partial ownership or a full ownership of one of the printers. And it's one of those things where the word around has been that they've had that access to it. And by having that, that's just another piece of the puzzle. It's another way that you can apply pressure. Because even if you're not trying to be a monopoly, at the end of the day, you want to avoid that. But you can still have a very dominant position because there aren't that many suppliers going around that can do these things for these manufacturers. The card manufacturers don't produce cards anymore. That's one of the pieces we talk about quite a bit. But the reality is if they're not producing the cards anymore and they don't have access to their own manufacturer, they're at the mercy of these suppliers. So if anybody controls the suppliers, you suddenly control the supply lines that everybody has to use. And one of the things that we talk about on the live stream quite a bit is kind of the struggles that Upper Deck has getting some of these products released. Well, at the end of the day, they're under the same rules as everybody else. They're operating with the same suppliers. That's kind of the reason they had to go to Italy to supply some of the cards for the Cup and things like that. And also, they've got a supplier in Canada that does some stuff for them. They're trying to find all these additional sources in order to be able to get the cards out the door. And if anybody controls that and even slows down your ability to release, you can impact your business that way. It's a way of applying pressure. So it's one of those things where if Fanatics gave themselves access to it, which it appears they have, it's just another step in the direction of trying to push the other manufacturers to comply and give them what they want. In this case, Panini is kind of the target in their crosshairs. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? Control that a little bit, make that a little bit more difficult for you. You've got the impending crossover of the license. That's going to end eventually, and it's outlined in this article a little bit here as well. But let me grab a couple more points from this article. Again, I'll leave it for you if you want to scan the whole thing, but it summarizes things exceptionally well, and I want to give them credit for that. Multiple employees have left their positions inside the trading card operations of Panini America this week, Sports Collectors Daily has learned. 4 members of the company's product development team resigned abruptly on Tuesday, followed by half of the company's acquisitions department. We're told by a reliable industry source that the employees resigned and were not terminated. That is extremely important because that is a difference between something weird happening and, yeah, they were poached. So they got an offer probably they couldn't refuse, and there you go. So Fanatics has had a bunch of different job openings, and you can cover a lot of that here. And you go, just be aware, industry personnel from Fanatics and Panini were together in the same room last week at the Mint Collective. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of smoke here. Whether there's fire or not is something we're going to find out. But the fact that these folks left abruptly, it leads to the suggestion that Fanatics got to them and was able to make a deal. Well, what's another way of slowing you down? Having access and slowing things down as far as the printer, you can make life more difficult. Again, you don't have to stop it. Just make it more difficult. Slow things down. Well, taking key personnel and put folks that fill in slots that you need at the same time that all of a sudden you leave Panini needing some people. It's another way of slowing them down. It's another way of creating a little disruption, a little problem for Panini, and basically implying, using the mob analogy, it would be a shame if suddenly you didn't have certain key individuals that do certain work for you that you need in order to continue your operations. So Panini has to kind of look at themselves and say, like, okay, how long can we hold out and what are we going to have to do? Is this just a pressure tactic to move them towards making that deal? Either a sale or basically giving them the license. And that's one of those things that Panini has to kind of look inward and figure out. But it's, like I said, it's been another step in Fanatics. Fanatics seems to have ramped up its aggression in trying to get these access to these things. And the word out there that they're going to make a set for the 2023-2024 season ahead of the expiry of the license with the Topps branding would indicate that I think they want to have it with the license. That was the question we had when that discussion was brought out there, when that tweet came out. It's, are they going to do it with a license? Because they don't actually have a license as far as we know currently. And that's absolutely the key. And if you remember that little discussion back a couple of months back where it looked like, a sale was imminent, but nothing ever happened. It's one of those things where maybe Panini rebuffed them at the time, and here we are. Now just an opportunity. Fanatics has come back around and said, well, okay, you didn't want to do it then. How about now? How are you feeling about it at this point? Because we can make life a lot more difficult for you going forward. And it's just, like I said, it plays into the idea that Fanatics has been a lot more aggressive now, pushing them. So it just says here, the Panini departures fuel a belief by some in the industry that Fanatics may be working to acquire the licenses needed to produce cards earlier than the scheduled expiration dates, which is exactly what we just talked about. And just as a reminder here, the Panini NBA license is scheduled to expire in 2026. Fanatics deal with the NBA and its Players Association for future years was hammered out in the summer of 2021. So it looks like Fanatics may be losing patience with sitting around waiting. Even though they could sit around and wait, why not have it now? And the possibility out there being floated of a 2023-2024 set, there's a real possibility they're doing everything they can to make sure that is a licensed product, which would certainly be a game changer before the end of this year. So we'll have to see how that piece plays out. But anyway, just curious to get some thoughts. I'll leave a link to all these things in the description for you if you want to sit down and read them at your own leisure and get a little background on it. It is interesting. It's one of those things that, praise the content gods, as I joke about on the channel all the time. I'm sure in the weeks and months to come, if nothing specifically happens with it just yet, if it sits around a little bit, it'll be a topic of discussion for sure going into the live streams and different videos and things coming up as we go forward into the summertime. With that said, kind of curious your thoughts. Obviously from a Fanatic standpoint, this makes a lot of sense, applying whatever pressure you can to try to get a deal done the way you want to do it under favorable terms for you. I can't blame Panini for holding out a little bit because they still have access to the license, and that's still potentially a cash cow for them. They can try to milk as much as they can out of it, but at the same time, if Fanatics makes it increasingly more difficult through various means to either poaching talent from them or even potentially, as I said, even potentially using any control or influence they have over the printers to make it so that Panini releases struggle a little bit to get out the door, similar to what Upper Deck is currently having. Again, not necessarily for the same reason, but if you're Upper Deck, you would be foolish not to at least be looking over and wondering what's going on over there and be a little bit concerned, because even though Fanatics will probably never try to go for a full-fledged monopoly because that would create its own problems that you would create for yourself, you can still make life more difficult for your competitors. You don't have to make it easy for them. And now you've got a lot of different levers you can pull that can make that life difficult. You can throw a lot of money at them, steal your talent, or make it a little bit more difficult for you to get your stuff printed. In the same vein with Panini, we talk about the NBA license and the NFL license, which are two key ones that they have. They also have the WWE license. Well, we already know that Topps is going to get that back. So that's going to be another lame duck license that Panini currently has. That could be another thing that could play into that, because I've been talking a lot about the wrestling cards recently. Well, the reality is that's going to impact that too. So Topps will be back in the game more than likely in a few years in the same vein, going with what's happening with the NBA and the NFL license. So does Fanatics also pushed to get that a little bit sooner. Anything they do with Panini, everything's suddenly in play. All the cards are on the table. So that's really the question that comes forward. So curious about your thoughts in the comment section. As an observer, this is kind of a wait and see thing. It doesn't necessarily affect us right now, but it's just something interesting to keep an eye on if you're somebody who's interested in observing what happens with a lot of these things. Anyway, that's it for me. More videos coming up on the channel. Live streams on Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to do that again this Friday. So good Friday, but I'll still do the live stream as normal. We'll see who I can get to come on and hang out for a little bit. Otherwise, it'll be the usual Friday thing. We'll talk about this maybe and a little bit anything else going on. Otherwise, like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.